So, just so you're all aware, we have 2 mics now. And I'm more than willing to pass this around, but this one is live, Keith's is live, and we thought we were going to have a couple more, but the channel problem on who can communicate, so we're going to stick with this for the time being, and we'll see how it goes.
And we are up.
Pardon?
We are on.
I'm going to go live then.
Yes.
We are. So 30 seconds here will be on.
It's 13 hours.
13 hours. It's 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll do a roll call. Commission members are here. In attendance we have. And you met them all now, Kathy?
I do.
The Councilman Zimmer's here. And we have a guest from the Department of the City. I heard the name Michelle listed. Is that you?
That is me. I'm Michelle McPherson. I'm the city administrator.
Nice to have you here, ma'am.
Nice to be here.
We also have the guys from staff here and our old friend Jack. Just keep an eye on us. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. And you've had a chance to see that. And any additions or deletions?
I have a question under ongoing business.
Yes.
Are we missing the ongoing business that's still ongoing from the last meeting?
In particular, what are you?
The fees and ACH comments and where we're at with that?
We can add it. I have no update at this time.
Okay. How would be the method then if what doesn't get taken care of, or what I would call a whole business, and ongoing is fine, but how are we keeping track of what we don't resolve if it's not carried forward on the new agenda?
I guess I'm not sure where you're going with it. If the chair and I work together to establish the agenda to address the issues that we think need to be addressed. If there's something that another commissioner wants to have on that agenda, then that's when we can do an addition.
Yeah, I'm not being critical, but if it doesn't get resolved, yes or no, or a continuation, shouldn't it be on ongoing business, Mr. Chair? Otherwise, it just disappears into nothingness, and we have to keep track in our own mind on, oh yeah, we got to take care of that yet. That to me is the purpose for old business or / ongoing business.
Yeah, I guess it becomes a question though of how if there are things going on in which there's not a report, you could end up in here, you could end up with an agenda that's pages and pages and pages long of all the things that we're working on.
Not if we're actively addressing them. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
Erickson or Chairman, did
I
you
mean,
have comments
that's
on that?
commission.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, because I guess that's come up before in my mind too. It's like, well, we were talking about, one of the things I was thinking of was the credit application, and it came up a few times and it would be off and it would come back up again. It's like, I guess, it would be nice to have like a process so where if it didn't get resolved, how does that get carried forward, or
it ends up, it is discretion of the commission. I mean, there are a lot of things that this commission talks about. There are some that are discussion items. There are some items to look into, and then there are action items. If there's an action item, then it would be on there. But if there are simply discussion points, which we discuss a lot of different topics each month, and there's something in which we need to have follow-up within a required time, then that's one thing. If it's just an ongoing, what I have here are two, well, the AMI and ED in particular are projects that this commission has voted on and approved. And it is there are monthly updates to provide on that. There are other items that this commission has approved, such as the wellhead correction plan that we're working on this year, and the electric system study that we're working on this year. For neither of those do I have an update at this time. So I did not put them on the agenda since I don't have a report for that just yet. And so as there are developments, that's when I put things on the agenda. And if I don't have a development, then I have to put it on. But if there's something that the commission wants to have on the agenda every month, that's the commission's discretion at that point.
I think in this particular case, we're probably talking about credit card fees and those kinds of things that we've said we want to discuss and we want to have some resolution and find some path forward on that. And so I guess at least I left it in my mind, is that you were going to pursue some things and what the process would be and what options we might have. I know we've investigated a lot of other different utilities doing it one way or another way. And so in this case, it might have been helpful to have it back on just to give us an update of what's happening or not happening, because nothing at this point has been decided about how we're going to conduct ourselves going forward, whether we're going to have a charge. Am I on the wrong page here, Rick?
No, you're on the right page.
We haven't made a hard, fast decision about how we're going to go forward with that, how, when, and with whom, and how that's going to go. And so that's kind of left out there. And I didn't catch it when I was looking at the agenda earlier, but it's something that as you investigate, and to some extent you've addressed it because we're short-staffed, we've got a lot of things on your plate right now, not getting the attention that it might. But I think that's something we want to put on the agenda for our next meeting, certainly to kind of get an update when you've been able to determine what those costs are going to be, and how we might go about it, and what the timing of that might be. We don't necessarily need to do that today. If we have some extra time, we can certainly address it. But I think things like that we have had a discussion and we left the ball in your court, it would be prudent, I think, to have it on the agenda and then left with, okay, so we haven't made any progress. I'll just give you an update this, but nothing's happened. But it's there on the agenda so that we can address it or not, as the case may be.
I don't know how we keep track of it if we don't, if it's our list of 5 things and we're busy doing other things that come up, it gets forgotten about. And I'm more responsible than that. I want to, if it came up at one meeting and it was resolved, then it's done. But if it came up once or twice and we still have an ability to fix or save or correct something, that should always be on the agenda, in my opinion. I've never been on any committee that doesn't do that.
That would imply to me that the commission needs to decide every time if an issue has been resolved or not, so that I have clear direction as to whether it needs to continue or not.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
I would just, if we could add update to this agenda on that, even if it's, I have no update.
So then the ongoing, we have an 8 delta, 8D.
and that would, I'm sorry, but then EAP is what?
ACH fees, etc.
So then, is the commission then also saying that we also want to add in an 8E for wellhead protection plan, 8F for electric system study? I'm trying to think of all the different things that are underway at the moment. We discussed tree trimming. We have the.
Okay, my only concern, if I may, Keith, is B. if someone else wants to hear an update on those other things, I guess they can speak to that and have the agenda correct.
Well, and then that's my question, is because then it is discretionary as to if an individual thinks it's important or not. And as the general manager, if the discussion here is if the commission talks about it and they want to keep it on the agenda until it's resolved, then I need to be very clear as to when it's resolved. So what I heard was all the projects that this commission has talked about, we want individual line item updates for each of those. So if that's the case, then I
I'm
would have
not
to.
requesting that.
I think, maybe moving forward from, this point forward, if we just be, if we're clear on that, like, okay, I would like to keep this on the agenda for the next meeting.
That's
Or
what,
not.
yes, that's
I
what
don't think we need to go, there's nothing else that I can think of off the top of my head right now that we've discussed in the last year. Not that there isn't something that will pop back up, but at this moment, there's nothing. But I think that's a good point that you bring up. Like, if we have a discussion on a topic, at the close of that discussion, we should determine whether that gets brought forward to the next meeting or not.
Yeah.
I think that's simple enough. I don't know, that's.
Indeed.
Okay.
So the D will work. E and F will probably do it, D for the time being, although those are certainly important features that I think from a commission standpoint, we've already given our stamp of approval on the electoral study. As it goes forward, I notice that we're paying for it. So, you can give us an update as you see fit when there's some progress to be noted. But basically, it's already gotten the stamp of approval from the commission, so we can just march forward from there. Are there any other deletions or corrections to the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda with that addition.
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. What's this? Oh, very nice. Okay. Number 3, the approval of last month's meeting, February 24th. Are there any additions, corrections to that?
I have none.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Good.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3. Motion is carried. Item 4, I would like to make a comment here because we're on air, that this is a public comment section we put on every month. Because we have been remote for all these long months, we haven't had many people walk in and have their 2 cents worth in front of the commission. It is still possible to do that. So you can ask for some time, you can call the office, you can send emails to any of the commissioners or to Mr. Butcher and say you'd like a couple minutes. We would read your comments on air and we'd be glad to hear them. Just because we don't have the throngs that we used to have attending these meetings doesn't mean that there's no room for public comment. So please take advantage of that should you feel the need. Okay. Number 5, certification of accounts payable. The bills are listed there.
Was there anybody that wanted to?
Oh, yeah, was there anybody? Nobody told me ahead of time that they had it. Usually nothing. Anybody out here, the peanut gallery have an interest? Okay. Now we have the bills and payables for this last month. Anybody has any questions on those? Certainly Rick would have one. What did you?
Yes. 65. I'll just point that out that just going by last month's charges came out to 21,600. Jules, I think that's the number you also reported to the council. Just using this month, if that was the average, it would be 26,216. So it does vary quite a bit per month. That's my only comment. I have no other issues with the certification. I make a motion to accept that.
All those in favor? Oh, I need a
Well,
second.
I have one question, just curiosity on, I'm trying to find the number. It was, garbage bags of Jim Smoll's disposal. Was just surprised by the amount, so I was just curious what.
Do you have a line item number?
14. Yes, 14.
14. Oh, yeah, it was written right as $1,120 for garbage bags from Jim Smoll's disposal. It just seemed odd to me.
Yeah,
We sell the, people can come and buy the Jim's disposal bags at our office. So we buy them from him and then we turn around and we sell them to the.
I figured it was.
We get a discount on them, buy them from the Jim.
Okay. I figured there was a perfectly fine explanation, but I had to
Really big tag.
ask. Okay, I'll second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passed. Is that gavel really necessary in post?
that is your discretion.
The accounts payable have been approved. Then we go on to reports. Keith, you start off with simple reports.
The only thing that I will mention in the reports is at the February board meeting, Simba did announce their 2020 resource mix, which means our resource mix for last year. For our electricity that we supplied to the community, 39% of the electricity came from coal, 33% from market purchases, 27% from renewables. The current Minnesota renewable energy standard is 20%, so we are above our statutory obligations. And 2% is natural gas. What made that particularly interesting in the natural gas perspective is given the cold snap that the country experienced with the spike in natural gas prices, you can see that it really didn't impact the simple membership significantly, and it didn't impact us significantly either. So we were positioned pretty well for that, and SIPA did report that they expected no significant financial impact on their books, and thereby not impacting the membership either. So we have such a low component there. So I thought that was interesting, so I thought I'd just point it out. Otherwise, the minutes and all the reports are in your packets. Unfortunately, the cash reserve report did not get included in your packets in time for when they got posted, so I did put those at your seats, and I did give copies to Jules and Michelle as well, so that they have them. Again, these are before year end, so they're pre-audit numbers, but you can see that our days of cash on hand on the electric side and on the water side. And per the Commission's directive last month, I did include on the graph for the electric days of cash on hand, both with and without the rate stabilization accounts included. So that is in your reports, and that's the format I'm going to use going forward.
Thank you for that. So that covers both simple and the financial reports.
Yes, sir.
We'll go to updates from the electric department. You have both Scott and Jeremy listed here. Do you guys have your own 2 cents to add here today?
Yeah, before we get into that, if I may, I thought it would be good for the department heads to start giving their own updates to the commission, and therefore, in lots of cases, if there's some, technical questions or, questions in the weeds that the commission wishes to explore, you got the experts right here. So I thought it would be beneficial.
Mr. Daniels, you're on, sir.
Water department, we are in the process of doing the actuator upgrades to treatment plant number 1.
Excuse me, Scott, we're on the generation plan first.
Oh, I apologize, generation plant. The engine runs have been going fine. They did a test run on Sabbath again today, which went fine. We did experience a water leak on one of the cylinders on the unit that we think we have it repaired. And we won't know that until we do another test run on it.
So 7 is up and running and we don't have anybody from Caterpillar here nursing it along or anything?
Nope, it's doing good.
Hallelujah.
Yep.
We spent enough time with that one last year, so it's kind of nice to see that everything's moving
Absolutely.
along as planned.
I would like to add too that on March 15th, we did have a representative from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency here to do an on-site inspection for our air permit. That inspection went just fine. They didn't find anything of concern. There was some minor reporting changes that they asked us to implement. So I did refile our CRO4 report to the state they wanted some additional information included in the cover letter. So it wasn't actually in the report itself, but they wanted to know our annual NOx emissions. In addition, they did ask that we file, it's called the Quad Z report. It has to do with the internal engines and emissions. It's a federal report, but the state, it's in our air permit, so the state wanted us to submit that as well. Even though the state has jurisdiction over our air permit, not the feds, it was listed, so they wanted to make sure that we kept up on that. And so we have included that now in our reporting schedule. All those have been submitted to MPCA, and as far as I've heard, everything is
We're all good on that front.
meets their standards, correct?
Good. Thanks, Scott. Mr. Linden.
Yes, in the electric department, since the last commission meeting, we've been doing some tree trimming of some of the areas that we needed to get into with the frozen ground and the snow, just to not wreck as much of the yards and stuff as we can. Like I said, it's some of the areas we wait until it's frozen in the winter time. There are still some areas that are accessible by road, right off the edge of the road and stuff. We'll continue to do them throughout the year. About 3 weeks ago, we did receive 460 AMI meters. So the last week and a half or so, we've been continuing on with those, weather permitting. We're concentrating on the north side of town, just up from the roundabout, north of the roundabout, to help strengthen the mesh, getting back to the office and stuff, the reliability. And there's only just a handful of 3-phase meters left in town to do. So pretty much all of our CNI, our 3-phase customer accounts, big accounts are completed. And the rest are pretty much just residential meters. And then also during the rain day and stuff, we've been doing some GIS updating. We're gonna start putting the individual structure identification, the units in. I was at a emergency preparedness seminar last week for a couple of days, and they had spoke to how it was helpful for them in the event of a major storm to just be able to go onto the computers and pick the individual units and know what they were without having someone to take the time to drive around. It sped up the material acquisition process. And it'll also help us in, budgeting and stuff going forward for just, if we're going to replace lines, to not have to send somebody out there to do it. It'll be much faster, cleaner, and easier to do it right off the computer. So that's something else that we're working on, and just continually updating the GIS so we find stuff that's missing, adding it in, making it as best as we can.
For those of us that are not as familiar with the nomenclature, the GIS refers to the graphical interface system?
Yes, yep. It's basically a mapping system where we have all of our equipment and infrastructure listed on there, all of our service points, and each layer has its own symbol, and then you have a field where you can add, you click on like a service point, and like Rick's house, we can click on a little bullseye that has his meter, and it'll tell us many different things, information, and same for the poles, all the power lines, water valves, curb stops, fire hydrants. We've got an inspection and maintenance for the fire hydrants and the valves for when they do the flushing and stuff like that. It's all tied through that GIS system. It's really clean and efficient and easy, user-friendly way to keep track of that stuff versus, on paper maps and stuff like that. And it's helped immensely for things like these studies that we're doing. We're able to share that information with them. They can have a read-only where they can't change the stuff, but they can export data from it versus having to enter it all manually. It works out well for instances like that as well.
Cool.
The GIS system is geographical in that all the assets are stored in a database using its latitude and longitude readings. So therefore you can map out exactly where everything is at, and that's how it feeds into a lot of our applications.
That's good on a couple of reasons, because I just made that up, I didn't know. And it turns out it worked out very well. No, it's good. It's good to have that kind of information available, and, because when we're trying to pinpoint problems, it's nice to be able to go quick and know that right away it's Rick's fault or something. Thank you very much. Anything else, sir?
No, nothing electrical right now.
Okay. Mr. Hinton is your backup. Now water.
Water treatment plant number 1, we're doing the valve actuator replacement. So far, so good. Couple bumps in the road, but we'll get through it.
Okay.
AMIs, we're waiting on the next shipment of AMIs, so we're doing cleanup. Middle water tower is still out of service. That won't get put back into service until next month.
Any issues with that being on the service at this point?
Nope.
Got enough capacity in the other places to cover for them?
Yes.
So the AMI you're talking about is a different unit compared to what?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And then one last thing, our new skid loader is here. On behalf of all of us fuel guys, we thank you. We like it, and it's yellow.
And it's yellow. That was the key thing. We managed to get a yellow or something like that. Okay, good. Thank you very much. City of Princeton update. Hand off, guys. Who's on first?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it gives me a great pleasure to introduce our new city administrator. I'd like to introduce Michelle McPherson, who's with me today, and I believe Michelle started, I think it was March 8th. March 8th, and we're happy to have her aboard. She's jumped right in and is involved in just everything that the city is involved with, and let her introduce herself.
Thank you. As Joel said, I'm on day 13. So it's been, basically I've been meeting my staff, sat down with all of the city hall staff, even those that aren't technically my direct reports, just to find out what they do, things that they could see, improvements in processes. Got a tour of the city from Public Works Director Gerald and also from Chief Frederick. Spent some time with the chief over at the public safety facility. Our Fire Chief Lawrence will be touring the other half of the building with me next Tuesday, I think. So then I'm visiting the liquor store on Friday morning. Let's see, spending a lot of time with the airport stuff. So I had to kind of jump in the deep end, and luckily I can swim. So haven't gotten too far over my head yet. So that's been enlightening. But a little bit about my background. I'm on my 34th year of public service. I have a bachelor's in landscape architecture and a master's in public admin. I spent my first 12 years working as a community development assistant, planning assistant in my hometown of Fridley. So I worked there, and then I spent about 18 months in the city of South St. Paul doing their comprehensive land use plan. Did a lot of community engagement, getting input from the community. Did a little of a housing conditions analysis study for the HRA. They were working on a, what do I want to call it? Sort of a lot by lot offering, trying to do single family redevelopment. And they needed some design guidelines because they were getting some, what I would call more traditional suburban housing style versus some of the older four square and more architecturally compatible with their neighborhood type designs. And from South St. Paul, I spent 5.5 years in Elk River around the time of the building boom. And then I've spent the last 15 years with Mille Lacs County as their director of land services, so planning and zoning, building permits. And I was also the county reporter. So I've kind of bounced around all over the place a little bit, and I'm happy to be here. This has been a goal of mine to be an administrator. So this fits right in. And as Jules can attest, I have jumped in with both feet, and I anticipate that we have a new finance director. She's very good, and the community development manager is also very good. So I will be focusing more on some of the admin stuff that might have been not necessarily neglected, but maybe not was given as much attention as maybe it should have been. So I'm hoping that between the finance director and I, we can push the city into a little more technologically modern methods of doing things. It'll take a little time, but I'm looking forward to meeting those challenges. There's a very good staff at City Hall, and so I'm more than comfortable letting them do their jobs and letting me focus on the admin stuff. So, and you'll probably see me. My goal is to be here and make Keith's job, but I do construction projects, so I've already reached out to them so that we can make sure that we're working collaboratively with them as they're doing projects in the city to make sure that our infrastructure needs are being met. So trying to keep the lines of communication open. That's my goal. So.
Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
My door is always open, so if you're by City Hall and you have a question, feel free to stop in.
Well, and I'd like to serve as an open invitation anytime you have last Wednesday, come see us.
Yes, although I know where Keith lives, so I'll either email him or stop by. So if I need an answer sooner than that. So
Good. Glad to have you here.
thank you.
Mr. Butcher, the general manager's update.
Yes, sir. In terms of some regulatory updates, we did get our OSHA report submitted this month. We also got our EIA 861 report submitted as well. The next report that is due is that we have a reliability report due April 1st, and so I was working on that this morning. Already mentioned the MPCA air permit inspection that occurred on the 15th. Also, I will be adding in NOx emissions as part of that report. The Quad Z as well, which is a semi-annual report, we now have on our schedule going forward. And excuse me, and there was actually some question from the inspector as to whether or not we have to file what's called the DRF1. We got SIPA involved in that. It's one of those reports where it says if you have some continuous operating measurement systems in fact, report on that. We don't, which is why we haven't been filing the DRF1. And in fact, talking to SIPA, none of SIPA's generation has that, short of Sherpa 3, which kind of tells you the complexity of the system that's underway. So we actually got SIPA involved. That and continue to follow up. In terms of collective bargaining, we do have our first meeting scheduled for next Wednesday, March 31st. And I did want to point out that yes, we are experiencing a staff shortage, a temporary staff shortage in the office. And so just want to thank everybody for their patience as we work through that. On the IT side of things, Mr. Berkman and I held our semi-annual IT review with CW, which is our contractor that looks over and manages our IT network. We discussed several items with them, the continued CW care service agreement, server support, as well as our backup and disaster recovery plan. We also discussed several strategic items within our alignment plan, including security, infrastructure, communications, and business and management services. All in all, we're continuing to move forward with the 5-year IT plan that was approved by the commission at the end of last year. The demand side management aspect, I just wanted to point out that we did get our results in for our 2020 Be Bright program, which is the rebates that we give at the cash register for folks that purchase LEDs at the end of the year. For 2020, we ended up rebating 1,800 LEDs, which is an increase over 2019, where we rebated 1,424. So it's a nice bump there, giving us a total savings of 40,969 kilowatt hours, which goes into our SIP report, which is again another regulatory requirement that we maintain. For external relations, there were 2 Mmua legislative briefings in the last month. Commissioner Schwartz and I participated in a regional Zoom meeting with Mmua members and Representative Pete Sauer to talk about the issues facing municipal utilities. And then I participated in a regional Zoom meeting with Mmua members and staff from Representative members group, and talked about the same issues, mostly climate change legislation, taxes, the natural gas price spikes because it's hitting some of our peers pretty hard. Like I said, fortunately, we had very minimal impact from that, but there are others who saw significant challenges, as well as a few other technical items looking at. So we did participate in that to make sure that Princeton is also heard on those issues. In terms of ongoing COVID impacts, our February electric kilowatt hour usage was 1.6% over our 2015-2019 average. So that's good. We're bouncing back. For the year of 2020, though, our electric sales were 4.4% under the 5-year average. So gives you an idea of how COVID impacted our from an electric perspective. We did start doing some cycling for some customers who we were having a difficult time getting responses from, and we're experiencing significant arrears. That occurred last Thursday on the 18th. Actually, Chairman, you and I were talking about that the other day. Given all the rules and regulations that are in place for electric utilities as it pertains to disconnects, we thought it might be a good idea to go through a quick overview of what the cold weather rule is, so the commission knows all the different things that we pay attention to and the process we have to follow in order to do a disconnect.
I might just add in here that the reason Keith and I were talking about this is I happened to catch a report on Minnesota Public Radio as I was driving the other day, and they were speaking specifically about the impact of COVID on people's ability to pay bills, specifically those important bills regarding utilities, and how difficult it was, and all the complications that they have. People out there specifically talking about the regulations and the resources that people have, from their local all the way up to the Attorney General that they could talk to if they were having issues. So this cold weather rule goes away on April 15th. And so I thought as we were approaching this date, it would be good if we were mindful of some of those things. So we're going to have some issues, have had issues. It'd be good for us to be cognizant of all that implies. There are legal repercussions, regulatory repercussions that I think we need to be aware of. So that's why I asked Keith to take a minute to kind of explain this. I'm glad he's got a hand up.
Yeah, I got a little bit of information for you, and there is additional background information that I'm happy to share. And I sent a packet as well this morning, just really getting kind of in the technical weeds, but just so folks are aware of the statutes. In essence, the cold weather rule runs from October 15th to April 15th of each year. And the intention is, in Minnesota, we don't want to create a health and safety issue by shutting off something that affects the main heating system within the building. The cold weather rule does not mean that you cannot disconnect, but it does delineate a process that must be followed by all utilities before you can disconnect. And what a lot of it comes down to is notification and the willingness to work with customers, both of which we have taken extensive steps to make sure that we have gone above and beyond the requirements of the cold weather rule. But in essence, before you can do a disconnect, you are required during the cold weather period to notify the customers 20 days in advance that they are subject to disconnection. At that point, they do have the ability to appeal, in which case that would come to me. And then at that point, if they still want to appeal that again, then that's when they would come here and talk to this commission. The intention is to try to get them on some sort of payment plan. And that payment plan needs to be cognizant of their individual financial situation. So under the code weather rule, we can't come in and say, okay, you got to pay half today and half tomorrow. You know, we have to work, you know, and we do. We do this regardless of the legislation. We're trying to help customers get back on their feet again. So you are required to come up with a plan, and then the customer is required to abide by that plan. But if a situation comes up where they can't meet the plan anymore, no, then they contact us and we figure something out. That is in effect through April 15th. And so once the summer comes and you don't have to worry about the heating system not being on and therefore pipes freezing and creating more damage than what was than you may have intended. Once summer comes, then a lot of these steps go away. Now, what we do in terms of working with these customers is when we have somebody who is in arrears, we will send out a reminder letter. And then if we don't get a response from that, we do send a disconnect letter out. And that is the other, in that disconnect letter is the this little trifold item that I put on everybody's desk. And I gave Jules and Michelle a copy as well. Is to make sure that, and this is a requirement of the cold weather rule, but we actually send this out in each disconnect letter as well, to make sure that folks are aware of their rights as well as their responsibilities. And it does say that, under the rule, it doesn't forbid disconnects, but we do need to have them contact us. We need them to be able to call us up and put something together to get them on a path to payment. There also is some other requirements, again, things we already do. We make sure that they are aware of regional economic assistance programs. So that's through Lakes and Pines. And then in order for them to also get some protections, they are required to do some income proof that they are 50% below state median. Lakes and Pines takes care of a lot of that for us. So we work very closely in that area. So that sheet goes out in the disconnect letter 20 days prior to any disconnect activity. After that, if we still haven't heard from them within a couple of days of actual disconnect, we will actually go and put on door hangers. So in case they didn't get their mail, we'll put something on the door itself mentioning that they are subject to disconnect. Please contact us. And then if we still don't get any response from them, that's when we have done a disconnect. The only other thing I would mention is through this entire process, we did voicemail messages. We have emails. We're using that. And in some cases, if we have a secondary phone number, we try anything. I mean, we've got great office staff that is doing everything that we can. But we do have to follow those rules, and it is a state regulation, which means if someone can file a complaint to the Attorney General's office, which happens, in which case we spend time with the Attorney General to say, here's what we did, here's when we did it, here's what we said. And sometimes they'll try to mediate, which sometimes it's good to have a third party because customer will return their phone call and they won't return ours. So sometimes it can help facilitate that a little bit more. Under the cold weather rule, a disconnection is defined as any interruption in service. So what we did on Thursday, even though we were cycling on and off, is considered a disconnect under state law. We did the cycling to, again, just to make sure that the living space is maintained. And also because we were doing it more to try to get them to call us, to contact us. We're trying to get their attention. And so, you know, after we did that, we were able to now get in contact with a lot of those folks. And we've got most of those now who have contributed, you know, have made an initial payment, and we have set up a payment plan for them going forward. So we will continue on that path, you know, through April 15th, as we get out of that cold weather rule. And as long as they keep up with their payment plans, you know, we'll get them on a path so that their arrears go away. But if the customers don't keep up with those payment plans, then, you know, we are able to start cycling again. And the nice thing is with the AMIs, we are able to do that much faster than we could in the past. And so what we did with our disconnects on Thursday was we installed AMI disconnect meters at those locations. And we were able to cycle it from the office. So Jeremy and his staff and Scott and his staff didn't have to go out and get in a potentially challenging situation. We were able to keep staff, you know, in a good, safe environment and still be able to do our jobs effectively. So everything went off without a hitch. You know, I know Greg Berkman worked with Jeremy. We were testing out the disconnect procedures for weeks ahead of time. We were going through all sorts of different scenarios. So when Thursday came, it went off without a hitch. It was, you know, really good planning and good implementation on behalf of the staff. So they really deserve credit for how smoothly it went on.
Can you be, when you say rolling cutoffs, can you explain exactly what that is?
So basically it's like 2 hours on, 2 hours off. We actually did it for, we can vary it a little bit more because now it's all part of a program. In the old limiters, it was kind of a hard and fast, two on, two off. We can now do that by the minute. So, you know, we could do, you know, an hour and 56 on and 2 hours and 10s off, or, you know, however we want to just, again, just try to get the attention of those individuals so that they contact us. So that's really all that we're looking for. And so when I was talking to the AG's office on Friday, those were the things that I emphasized is, you know, we weren't doing this to throw them out in the cold. It's just we have been unable to get a response so that we could come up with a plan to help them out. And many of the customers that we dealt with were 6 months or more, in arrears. So it was, you know, utilities all across the state, you probably have seen reports in newspapers and things like that, are all seeing significant arrears going on. We are all concerned as an industry that those numbers are getting high, that it's going to be hard for people to dig themselves out. So the more that we can address stuff early and get them on a path, I think it is better for all of us, and that's what we're trying to do. So we're not, I can tell you, we're not doing it to be mean. We're not doing it to, you know, out of spite. We have tried everything else, and we had to take this step to try to move forward. So, but yeah, there's a lot of information in the handout that I provided to you, as well as another guide that is in your mailbox. Just probably more information than you want when it comes to it, but These items is how we have designed our process and procedures, and it's been under the recommendation of Mmua and various groups, and you know, all of us utilities are trying to do the right thing and follow the statutes. As we can.
Okay, good, thank you. Any questions at this point? Moving on to ongoing. Kind of circle back around to the AMIs.
Yes, sir. For AMIs, just want to mention on the electric side, we are 68.8% complete in terms of our conversions, and on water, we are 30% complete. We did identify a slight discrepancy in our demand reading data last month. We worked very closely with Eaton and UConn to understand the nuances of the peak demand calculations within the new AMI system. What we found was, although we were resetting our peak demands after every reading, it was not well understood by us, or actually by Eaton as well, that the Sentinel meters that we're using, which is a percentage of our meters, not all of them, also contain a reset that was scheduled for the first of the month over which UConn, which is our AMI software program, had no control. We were therefore experiencing some situations where the peak demand was actually lower than some of the actual demand readings during the full billing period. This discrepancy did result in a slight underbilling of demand charges to a couple of our large commercial and industrial customers. Given the complex procedure needed to ensure that multiple pieces of equipment, both within the office and in the field, are synchronized correctly to fully utilize UConn's peak demand reading, Mr. Berkman and I worked together and decided to change our data log process to return the maximum demand reading during the billing period as opposed to relying on UConn's peak demand algorithm. We implemented that solution for the current billing period, and we've been checking and rechecking all the raw data and everything with what we're expecting. So we have resolved that issue. Just to show that, you know, I think as the commission is aware, whenever you change systems, you always have a couple little items that pop up you weren't quite expecting, but we're working through them. And like I said, if anything, the discrepancy resulted in a slight underbilling of our customers, not an overbilling. So we got a little bit of a deal last month than what they would have had otherwise. So, but to go back and quantify all of that would be a very huge effort. So we just kind of implemented the changes going forward and acted accordingly.
Good. Good. EVs?
On the electric vehicle chargers, we do have the credit card reader now working on the DC fast charger outside of Coburn's. I actually get real-time data off of that, and I want to say in the last week and a half to 2 weeks, it's been used almost daily. So we should be collecting some revenues on that to help offset some of the costs, but it's nice to see it being used. So that's all very positive. Excuse me. We've also identified 2 locations for the 2 L2s that we have in storage at the moment, and we're working with both of those parties on a placement and host agreement. With the L2s, we are anticipating on moving forward with some installation on those. Those also have the ability for us to collect fees for their usage. And so in your packets is memo 21-11, which is to set up a fee structure for the L2 system. Again, we had already, this commission had already approved a fee structure for the DC fast charger, but given the difference in performance and infrastructure costs needed, a different fee structure makes sense for the L2s. The recommendation by Zep Energy, who is the manufacturer and also does the maintenance on the chargers, has recommended a $2 per hour connection fee for the use of L2s. That is what, from what I've heard, the Simba membership are all doing that fee rate of $2 per hour. So staff's recommendation is that we set our fee schedule for an L2 charge rate at $2 per hour, and that's without a connection fee. So it's just a pay as you use it type activity. And that $2 per hour is prorated. So If you use it for an hour and a half, you'll be charged $3. So it does do it on a percent, you know, it's not a full hour payment, it's whatever it's actually used for. That is staff's recommendation that we implement an L2 fee.
So I'm assuming you need a resolution from us to go forward with that,
I would need a motion, yes, sir.
gentlemen?
That is SIPA's recommendation.
That is Zest's recommendation, and the membership, from everything I've seen, have been implementing Zest's recommendation. And it is Zest's recommendation on the DC fast charger for what we implemented there as well. So, but yes, it is.
Okay, since you own an electric car, right?
Yes.
How long does the L2 take to fill the battery capacity?
If you're going from almost dead, it could take around 8 to 10 hours, depending upon the battery. And
So $20 if it was.
yeah, it also, I mean, it does depend too on, as part of the charger, the car itself, you can program to a certain amperage. So if you charge at 8 amps, it could take you 20 hours. If you charge at 16, you know, it would be half of that, it would be 10 hours. So part of it is dependent upon the charging plug that somebody puts in. Typically, the L2s will have, I would say, probably 25 amp service. Jeremy, do you remember offhand those L2s that we got in? Do you know what the average draw on those were?
Oh, no, not off the top of my head. It can't be a whole lot though. 'Cause
Yeah.
The DC fast charger isn't an exorbitant amount either.
Well, DC charge, yeah, that's a 50K, that's a 50.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's just 100 amp service.
Yeah, right.
So
My guess is the L2 is probably around 60 to 25 amps. So you'd be looking at, again, 8 hours or so, if you're almost, you know. almost
Is
there.
our cost being covered with $2?
You know, that's hard to say because it all depends on usage. You know, if one person uses it a month, no. If it was being used 24 hours a day, yeah, we're probably making money. Part of what we're doing is we're trying to build up the infrastructure to alleviate the anxiety that folks have in purchasing electric vehicles. So it's to let people know that it's there if they need it for an emergency.
Okay. I'll make a motion to set that fee at the $2 per hour.
I'll second. Just before we vote on that, do you know what the Elk River has some chargers in their parking lot of those L2 little ones, do you know?
In their parking lot? I don't know.
They have a, Chris, maybe you can help, you know, with that, where they have the farmers market in the summertime. They have a parking lot there near the meat market and stuff in Elk River.
Oh, in downtown?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe most of those are level 2s. I think they have a DC fast charger
At the Coburns in
Their
Elk River,
Coburns as
yeah,
well.
that's a
There's a
decent.
few, most of the ones you run into in like your park settings and your downtown areas are a level 2 because typically people are at those places longer. So you.
park there while they go to work.
Yep. Or, you know, they go, yep.
So do we know that $2 would be comparable to theirs or comparable to other communities that have it?
I don't know what Elk River does. The $2 is comparable to the SIPA membership.
Okay.
And that is Zest's recommendation, and they're one of the primary suppliers of chargers. So to me, I think it is right in there.
Okay, good.
And I don't have any data to say that we should do anything different. So, you know, kind of go with Zest's recommendation on this since they're the experts.
Any further discussion? If there is none, I would ask for the vote. All those in favor say aye. 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 So opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. Get my computer to come back up there. Moving on to, I have to shift gears here for a second. Okay. 8C, service territory developments.
Yes, the only update is that the city council did annex the industrial park, and Michelle did provide me with a signed annexation order from the city for that property. I have forwarded that on to to my contact over at East Central Energy. Their executive team is currently reviewing that, and they will get back to me with next steps in terms of doing the formal process of handing that territory over to us. So, East Central, it is, the ball's in their court at the moment, and we will be working with them on the regulatory and filing needs in order to do the formal.
Let's see, Minnesota Utilities Commission have anything to do with the switch on that?
Yes, the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission is the one that oversees service territories for the state for all utilities. They adjudicate if there are any conflicts. In this case, what we are hoping for, since it's really just an extension of the existing Arrow Business Park, is kind of how we're looking at it. And it's pretty small. We should be able to come to an agreement with East Central Energy on the parcels. And it's one of those things where East Central Energy and Princeton Public Utilities come in agreement already, then, you know, the PUC is not going to stand in the way of that. And then it's a matter of getting the official service territory GIS maps updated so that it is very clear as to who has jurisdiction.
Good, good. Thank you. Okay, move on to new business. First item.
If I may, we did do an addition to the agenda for 8D.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, we did. 8D, ACH, et cetera, fee schedules.
And I have no updates.
So let me have 2 cents, or would you like to go first? Go
Well,
for it.
I would, I know after this, and maybe did you talk about it at the city level about as far as those credit card convenience fees?
What I did was I think it was it was the first one after the last meeting you had, I informed the council that you were considering having a user fee for that. That's just for information for council. There was no reaction. And that Mr. Butcher was going to be contacting Tracy to discuss the matter as well.
I would just say that at the county, we took credit cards for building permits and like birth certificates, marriage licenses, those types of things. We did charge the credit card fee on those transactions, and I think, but I'd have to check with the auditor, there's something weird about credit card payments for tax payments, and I can't remember what the rule is, but I just can tell you from our minimum fee for that was $1.95, and then it was a percentage of the transaction after, I can't remember what the break was where it went from the standard $1.95 to like whatever the percentage was. So, but that's my 2 cents worth.
And, you know, I've done some research, and I pass that along to Keith, and I'm sure I'm guessing you guys can. Also, I talked to former Commissioner Sertz, and she was, you know, here when they implemented that first, when they started accepting credit cards, which I wasn't aware. I thought that maybe the impression I was under is that they stopped charging fees, but no, they didn't even take credit cards. So they just added credit cards as an option. And at that time, there was really no discussion about whether to charge fees or not. It was just like, we just want to give another option to pay. And then looking at the data that I pulled up, just how, we are, as the way we do business now, as consumers, the use of bank cards, credit cards is going up and checks are going down. And that's probably why when we look at that graph, I think the increased use of bank cards and credit cards is up 70% in the last, 10 or 15 years. I can't remember exactly what it said, but so, at the time that the commission made that decision, I think, I don't think they could have maybe had the foresight to see that, people don't carry checkbooks anymore. It's just not, my kids can barely write one out in their 20s, so I think, things have changed, and then that cost has been continually increasing, and I don't see any stop to it, that increase, until everybody's using it. And so, I don't, obviously there's free ways to pay, and I just, I guess after doing more research, I feel like, it's probably something we should do. I even was talking to one of my neighbors, and she was telling me that even ECFE charges if you use a check card. So it just seems like everywhere's charging these fees nowadays. So I don't see why our ratepayers should be absorbing that fee.
I think if I can speak to the county's position, the thought was that when it's a fee for service, the county should absorb those fees because it's the single user that is requesting that service. So that $1.95 or whatever the percentage was should not be borne by all of the taxpayers, so that the county should underwrite that fee. And I will echo your observation that from my previous department's experience, that when you informed them that there was an additional service charge, if they had a checkbook with, they would, crank out the checkbook and write a check. So if, as long as you inform the customer that there's a fee and that, cash or check is no fee, then they can make an informed decision. That was my experience at our counter, so.
Well, I do want to point out, I did forward a survey that we had, an informal one we had done of the Simple membership. And I'm sorry, I don't remember it. It was all.
Well, it's 50-50, yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
It's, we have the obligation to serve. Hopefully, we are, and to the situation that if you have somebody who's in arrears and start, I don't know if that's me or right, it makes it more complex. How that impacts all the members of our community, not just those with disposable income and do it for convenience sake, but for those who might be using their credit card to get month to month on it. So it is one of those questions, if it has a disparate impact upon the lower income members of our community, is it something, is that a fact? And that's also utilities I've looked at it is, if you charge a fee and they don't use their credit card, by using a credit card, we get our money right away. And if we don't do that, and then we accept a check, but then the check bounces. And then as I went through with the cold weather rule protection, it's not a matter of we can just shut people off and address things that way. There is an obligation to serve there. So it just makes things more complicated.
Yeah, and I read that, and so like I said before, before when they were having problems with paying, they didn't, we didn't accept credit cards at all. So yes, when we started accepting credit cards, I think maybe those people, you know, would pay regardless of, use their credit card regardless if there's a fee or not. If, you know, when they didn't have the option at all prior to that decision to accept credit cards. But, you know, to Michelle's point too, it's not, I don't feel like we should pass that along to the rest of the taxpayers, and that in your case, or ratepayers in our case. You know.
Yeah, my only concern as an administrator is if we, again, I am very attracted to the instantaneous payment characteristic of using credit cards. We get paid. And if we don't, as you saw when I went through kind of my explanation of the cold weather rule, we send out reminder letters and then disconnect letters, and then we're on the phone, and you know, there is a lot of staff time associated with that. I do think that this is my fear, that we will actually spend more money if we do this. That's my concern, because we will be allocating staff time that we are not having to allocate at the moment. Now, I know one of the things, well, Kathy can actually probably speak to this better than I can, which is before credit cards, you would spend a lot of time going through checks, and you know, there was a lot of paperwork and labor associated with those other forms of some of those other forms of payment.
I have to get back from the meeting, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you,
you next
Michelle.
month.
Nice to meet you.
So that administrative burden is something to keep in mind. I mean, everything that I'm hearing from this commission is the line item will never go away, because that's an expense. The question is, do you have something to balance that off? And that line item actually will almost triple by doing this. And the reason is because we are grandfathered into the utility rate, which I mentioned before, which is we pay $2 per transaction.
No, I completely disagree. And if I can take this time to speak, to me, it's like everyone's like trying to land like a butterfly with sore feet. You know, you're kind of really afraid to try something that everybody else is doing already anyway. That number's not going to triple. I think what you're going to find out is that people are going to go to the ACH. We're grandfathered in on. I don't buy that. I wouldn't bring that into the equation. This number is just going to keep going up and up. From last month, it was 21,000. This month, if you use that number, it's 26,000. And I think we're just here compared to here on the people that are going to be using credit cards. So we should get off the point on should we be doing this or not. I think that we made it clear, at least Dan and I voiced that we need to do this. We're the commission, Greg, if you disagree, you have the right to disagree. And I know you're shorthanded. This doesn't have to be done by, you know, the end of April. And what we could be doing now is just take a piece of paper and just inform the ratepayers that, have you ever thought about opening up an ACH? It saves money, it saves time, it saves paper, and just put that in their bill and get them thinking about that. So then when we do introduce the options to pay, they've heard the word ACH several times, and your options are still cash, credit card, check, ACH. We're making this more options friendly to you. If they want to get off the credit card, just like Michelle said, there's a fee. And so many more people are charging fees. For the grandfather deal, for them to turn around and say, oh, so you're going to charge a fee, we're going to charge you more than. Well, then, so you can charge us more and then we charge more. That to me is backwards. They shouldn't be allowed to do that.
You know, one of the things that I came across in that, in my research was there is a group out there that is trying to lobby to make it so you can't charge a fee to use a credit card to pay utilities, which I mean, it makes sense to me because I mean, these credit card companies are making plenty of money. It would be nice to see that legislation actually go through at some point, but obviously that, you know, that might never happen, or, you know, that's off my pay scale, obviously, you know, but that would be nice, and we wouldn't even have to have this discussion. We, you know, if legislation said, hey, you can't, the credit card companies cannot charge us a fee for accepting credit cards, that would be a beautiful thing, but you know, and the other point is, you know, checks are just, like I said, in Sweden, they do not accept checks. I just think that is the way it's going to be.
Well, I can only, I'm sorry.
That's okay. The thought came that we were gonna have our joint meeting, probably May 6th, 7th, whatever that is. This might be an excellent topic to bring up with city council because the sewer payments are tied into what we're talking about here too. And if you want to get their input on that, that might be the opportunity to do that. That's just a suggestion.
Mr. Chair.
The only thing I want to say is all I can do is give you the information that I've been given, which is we are currently paying $2 per transaction for credit card fees. I know of nobody else that is getting that. What we were paying before we signed this agreement back in 2015 was we were paying on the order of 2-3%. And so if we go from a $2 per transaction fee to 2 to 3%, the calculations that I had presented in my previous memo shows that assuming the same volume, which yes, that's a point that we can have a discussion about. But in order for us to get our arms around what the impact of this is, means that will triple. I mean, that's how the math works. Now, if we see a reduction in volume because of that, then yeah. All I'm trying to do is provide data to the commission so that they have all that evidence.
Sorry. Is there a way that we could, you know, rather than put a slip of paper in everybody's, is we could just start maybe informing the ones who are actually using the credit card that, just to let you know, we have an ACH option and that there might be coming a fee in the future.
How do you envision? Yeah.
Instead of, you know, shotgunning everybody, let's just take the people who are using the credit card. And then you'll start getting some feedback right away, I would imagine.
Yes, I'll let you go for a minute, and I have a couple of things I'd like to say as well. I don't have to introduce myself, one thing to think on me. I'm not gonna get into the administrative part of this whole deal. Mr. Butcher, the pros and cons, I'm sure. And Mr. Zimmer has brought up a point that I hadn't thought about, that I didn't know about. To me, this is a budget discussion in my mind. Not that you shouldn't be talking about or, you know, put it on the table, but I think it's a budget discussion for one thing. And my biggest concern of all is the public perception at this time. We just came off of 2 years of pure hell in this town. We all know it. And I can see Facebook lighting up like a Christmas tree. Look at them dirty suckers at the PUC. We told you they were ripping us off. Brad Schumacher is going to be leading the way. People like me, Lee Steinbrecher, many others, we work our tail off to try to restore the public image of this utility. To me, this is a slap in the face. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done at some point, should be talked about, but the timing is just horrendous. Couple of different points I'd like to make. First of all, Councilor Zimmer,
I appreciate your insight into bringing this up at a joint meeting, because although it doesn't appear obvious at the outset, this is going to affect everybody that pays for their sewer. And so, you know, the council's going to hearing from somebody, I have to pay a fee for paying my bill. That's not, there's going to be issues. Some people are going to go, big deal. I don't care. I mean, I've been paying these fees. I'll put it on my credit card, I get an extra miles, you know. So there's some political implications to this as well. And I think unfortunately, from my perspective, I think it's a coming thing. It's just going to happen for a couple of reasons. As Mr. Erickson points out, that money that we're paying is being carried by the ratepayers. They're covering that cost. As Mr. Schwartz points out, there's $20-something thousand a year that is not chump change. This is not something we could ignore or just overlook. I think it's important from at least from my perspective, is that if we're going to do this, we need to do a couple of things. Number one, we need to understand clearly what it's going to cost in terms of internal structures and efforts and that sort of thing, in terms of what's it going to cost our staff when we make this switch, if we get fewer credit card payments. What's that shift going to cost? Secondly, what's the impact going to be on how we pay bills ourselves? Could this change our cash flow? Is this going to make an impact on what we're doing? And then I think if we're going to do it, it is incumbent on us as a commission and as a utility to set a date, put it out there. You know, businesses I've been involved in, they always have price increases at the 1st of January. So that's where I come from. Okay, we're going to have a price increase. It should be on the 1st of January. And we should be letting them know 6 months in advance that this is our plan. Here are those options that we have. A check, an ACH, bring in a wheelbarrow full of pennies. We don't care. Whatever it is, you decide how you want to pay, but here are the options and here's what they might cost. If an ACH, Kathy, if I'm not mistaken, an ACH is no charge, then we ought to say, here, this is how this works and there's no charge to you. If you put it on your Delta Fly for Free Miles card, then it's $1.50 or $1.95 or $4.86 or whatever it is going to be. And it doesn't necessarily need to reflect exactly what the cost is for that, but maybe what the overall cost is, so we can reflect that. And, you know, by the same token, we are trying to run this as a responsible business. We're also, you know, outside of serving a commodity in the community, we're also selling a service. And we serve this community as a nonprofit organization. And so a certain amount of service is an important part of this equation, I think. Both my commissioners have, commissioner partners here have stated more than once, very eloquently, that we need to be responsible for these dollars, and I wholeheartedly concur. At the moment, I don't see fees for credit card, debit card, whatever kind of plastic you're going to use, are not going to go away. And I'm afraid that they are going to, those costs are going to increase going forward because there are so many men in the middle. It's not like Visa out there in the ether world is charging all of the fees, because between Kathy getting the check or getting that credit card number over here, there's probably 2 people in the middle processing those numbers to get them through to the bank that winds up with the money. And so those costs are just going to continue to increase as more people see opportunities to make a profit. I don't begrudge them that, but I think we need to be prudent about how we collect. So I think if we need to move forward, we need to make that statement. We need to gather those costs. We need to understand exactly what they are, and we need to set a date so that our customers know exactly what to expect from us. And at this point, I would suggest that we make that date available to them prior to the 1st of June. That'd be my recommendation.
Say that last part again.
I would like to see a date set. If we're going to make a change, we need to gather those costs. We need to understand what it is. And we need to let our customers know that this is our plan 6 months out in front of when that plan is going to take place. And say, this is what it's going to be. You buy asphalt equipment. You don't expect that price to change from your suppliers from minute to minute. You lock in a price. I would. So what I would like our customers to know, here's our plan. To keep your costs down, we must do this. We can't look at $20-something thousand as if we're unimportant. It is. Because all of us ratepayers are bearing that cost. And as I said, these guys have already spoken eloquently about that exact same issue. I think it's incumbent on us now to set a date and say, here, if we're going to do it on January 1st of 2022, we have a lot of work to do. And then we're going to announce those results, that plan, by the 1st of June or the 1st of July. Let's get it out there so that our customers know well in advance what they can expect from us as a commission, as a utility. I'm jumping off my soapbox now. Open the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with everything you just said, and part of my example was we're not doing this April 30th. And it's not meant to be slapped in the face to anybody. It's going to take time, and that's why several things here, but I do want to say again what I've said before. We are responsible for the expenses, and this month's illustration shows it would be $26,000 a year in cost. Let's bring everybody to this point right now that we are facing a rate increase. Okay, maybe it's not a big one, but it's a rate increase. I am going to go through the expenses to find out where we can cut before we have a rate increase. Now, Jack, maybe you didn't hear that, but I've said that a few times. I have to be comfortable with myself in looking at the bottom line. So if the consumers are educated that if you pay with an ACH or cash or a check, you're actually doing yourself a favor because you're allowing us to save this $26,000. Now, some are going to pay with credit card regardless, but if this is done in a way that people understand it, if we don't do that and it becomes a budget thing, then we got to raise right away to cover that $26,000 that we've been eating. But that's why counties don't do it, because they can't say, well, here's our budget and they're going to spend every penny of it, but oh, we forgot to add the 3%. I don't think it would be even legal for them to do that, to cover their costs that way, but that's why they charge. So if we're facing a rate increase right now, I think this conversation would be changing that. What else can we cut before we have a rate increase? That's all I want to end with.
I agree with what the chairman said too, that, you know, that's kind of what I had in my mind is let's, you know, telegraph this a long ways out, give people a lot of time and staff time to, you know, so it doesn't overwhelm the staff with the change. And if we start now with, you know, anybody that is paying with credit cards, I think it's a possibility this might be coming down the line. This is how you can set up ACH, you can avoid charges. And you know, I'm going to miss, you know, losing my miles, but I don't feel like any of the ratepayers should be paying for my flight tickets, you know, either. So, and it's just like, you know, but I agree, this should be telegraphed out. The other thing I was going to mention too is with just my personal experience this year with checks with my own business is a lot of people haven't really gone anywhere for about a year. not a lot of places. So when we go out to their homes and we're giving estimates for the asphalt work, and we usually get a down payment, we run into people don't have a checkbook even at home because they've been paying everything online. And so we did discover a service that there's services out there that you could just send them an email and it goes in for them to set up an ACH. So, maybe that's something that we can look at as, I don't want to hire a service for that. We could probably just send them an email, like, here's instructions on how to set up your ACH or whatever. But I was really surprised this year that we've been running into it multiple times. That people, yeah, I want to go, what do I got to do? We just got to write a check for a down payment. I don't have checks at their home. I mean, I get, they didn't bring one with, to the grocery store or something. But yeah, it's interesting how it's fast. COVID has changed a lot of things fast,
If I may.
Please.
One step that would help is in the memo I issued last month, there was a series of questions. I need some guidance. I don't know where this commission is at in terms of, are we talking a fixed fee? Are we talking a percentage? Are we talking about just credit cards? Are we talking about everything and anything? Are we talking about just monthly utility bill payments, or are we including construction fees? Are we there's a lot of logistics associated with this. And in order to do it, if I need a service, is the commission open to spending some money up front to do it? But there's gonna, I don't even know all the questions I have because we haven't done it. If it comes back and let's just take a ridiculous statement just to illustrate the point. But if it came back and we found out we had to spend with a $10 per transaction fee, is that something the commission still wants to do? I mean, until we know the numbers, I don't know. I just don't know when it's all going to play out. And there was a series of questions in there that were honest questions that I have as to what is the philosophy of this commission. So that's step one. If each commissioner has some time and can reread that memo and give me your thoughts as to how this would actually work, that would be helpful. From the second point, and this is, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent with the with the chair's approval. I think this commission is getting to a point where we might want to consider a prioritization activity, because there are a lot of things that we put in the budget for this year for activities for this staff to do. We are doing an AMI conversion, a full meter conversion that is a once in a generation activity. We are doing an electric system study that you do every 10 years. We're doing all of this in the midst of a once in a century pandemic, which has impacted our operations significantly. We took on a lot of projects. And so I am concerned that we don't want to, at a certain point, there's only so many hours in the day. And there have been a lot of discussions at various meetings to Commissioner Ford's point that this commission has talked about, that there are other things that you guys might think that we should be following up on that we haven't, because next month we have a new topic that we then talk about. A lot of the projects that we discuss are very big picture and aren't something that you can accomplish in a month. And so I do think it would be a very valuable conversation for us to say, here's all the things that this commission wants to see change, things that we are working on, and give me what your priorities are. because sometimes I feel like it changes from month to month, and that's just creating some stress internally. So I want to throw that out as something for the commission to consider, that as I look for guidance, and I want to be responsive to your needs, I want to make sure that we're all clear as to what that is. So that if we work on project A, it's understood that, okay, that means I'm not working on project B. So the minute A gets done, we understand that B is not right behind, then, then we have to work on that project. So I love the free-flowing discussion that we have. I find it a lot of fun because we're thinking about these ideas. But as we get to the point of implementation, it will help me to better understand the commission wants, these 10 items would be nice, but make sure you work on the first 3 and get those done. And then everything after that is gravy. And, if there's something that's really pressing, let's do that first. But we understand that means some of this other stuff's going to get potentially postponed until we get through those other activities. It's something that just so that we stay focused, Mr. Chair.
So let me ask my colleagues here. And because I'm talking to them, you can pay attention, just listen in on the side.
Yes, sir.
I would like to suggest, my fellow commissioners, that we set a date of January 1, 2022 for the implementation of a new structure for our other than cash and check payments for utility bills. And set that date out there for us to know today. And that we have an expectation that we should be able to discuss that with our ratepayers, our customers, on the 1st of July of 2021. So in the meantime, while we have that large plan out there, we charge you, sir, with the responsibility of saying, okay, they're going forward with this. They haven't told me anything about what they want to charge or how they want to charge it. So I'm going to come up with 2 scenarios. I'm putting words right into your mouth. I'm going to charge $1.95 for every transaction that we do to try to recoup some of this $26,000 that we're losing. Or I could charge 2% like the state of Minnesota does. I just paid for a license tab, $4.95 to process it. So there's somewhere in the middle, I think we can come to, here's the average of what's being charged out there to try to recoup those costs. Say, okay, this is what I found. In addition to that, I think it's going to cost us in our office this much extra effort, and you put a number on that. So that at one of these meetings, when you get to the old business section, you can say, we haven't made any progress on this, but we're still working on it. Or here's how far we got, and I think this is what looks like a reasonable plan. And by June, you can say, this is it. I think we've got it. And in the meantime, you can talk to us about what you're finding out, what your concerns are, because it's not an easy, off the cuff kind of decision to make. Other than we all agree that we need to recover some of those costs. Now, if we're going to be able to recover all $26,426.87, I don't know yet. But I would like to get some idea of how we're going to recover the bulk of that by the charges we would put on those bills. But I think, as Dan said, telegraphing this out there, and to a certain extent, just us being here, letting people know that we're not taking this lightly. This is not a whimsical notion to start putting money in our pockets. This is a very thoughtful notion to make sure that we can maintain the kinds of rates that we have had low these many years. And, we have things in place that we can use to try to keep rates low, but we can't use those all at the expense of, blowing our stabilization funds just to support people that want to use a credit card. I used to be one of those guys. Now I have ACH because Kathy told me it was cheaper. Okay, I'm on. And so hopefully, as Mr. Schwartz said, this part of this program is an educational thing. We need to let people know. But that's why I say if we telegraph this out there and we let people know, these are the options you have. You can do it really cheap, or if you want to collect those miles, you can go to Miami Beach or something, you can do that. We are as flexible as you need us to be, but here's the repercussions. And so I think you need to hear from us that that's what our expectations are.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Please.
So is the intent of what you're saying that on July 1, we know exactly what the fee is and how we're collecting?
Yes, that's my intent.
Okay,
Can I point to that?
yes.
Yeah, I don't want to just decide on fees until we've had this joint meeting, because obviously, I want, the city is part of the charge. And so I would like some input on what they think the fee should or shouldn't be. And then if we're not going to do a fee, or we should be at least charging the city a fee, which we haven't been, and then what would that be? So, I mean, there's going to be a fee, I think, one, whether, it's to the city or the city says, no, pass that on, or, you know what I mean? Because right now, am I right by saying that right now we're paying the city's fee, right?
Indeed, we will.
Yes.
So the public utilities customers are paying for this, on the city's fees, right?
Well, the city pays for a certain amount to have this, you collect the sewer fees.
Right, but the credit card fee wasn't included in that.
No, but you brought up a number of things in your comments here, right?
Yeah.
So I think it would be huge if this was on our discussion May 6th.
Right.
Because the city council should have input in this, whether they are for any kind of, to be involved in this, because we would be implicated with it, because you're right, the sewer fee would be attached to your convenience fee. So I believe they need to have input on this. And I can't tell you where they go. When I told them about it, it was for information purposes only, and no one gave any feedback about that.
Yeah, I'd like it to be a joint decision.
Yeah.
I think your input is important. We are partners in this billing process. And so having the council have their 2 cents is critical to us, but it goes back, I think, getting that information, getting your information and making those decisions so that by the 1st of July, maybe later, not flexible on that, but we have information to make a good decision and go forward. Sir.
I think that number is already in our pocket. Kathy, can you tell me how many, does your system allow to tell me how many people are using credit cards each month?
No. I have a spreadsheet that I keep track of.
But could you do that for me? Tell me,
I don't believe we know how many do debit cards and how many do credit cards.
No.
okay, anything that has a cost to it. Can you
They
tell
all
me?
have,
Hmm?
all,
It should come from the company.
all electronic payments have a fee attached to it.
Right, where I'm going with this is that if we know how many people are using a credit card or anything that has a cost to it, and through my numbers, it's simple division. I mean, if you have 5,000 people using a credit card, and you divide that into the 26,000, well, your fee is $4.50. Now, if you look at last month's, it's less, and an average will show itself. So if we know not who, but how many people are using credit cards, that's going to be a very accurate plus or minus to a 0.0 number. Because we know our costs.
In the first memo I put together, I tried to put those numbers together, where I went through the different costs that, okay.
Right, and I still have that. and
Yeah,
I
so
will look at it.
that should be the data you're looking for, right?
So I'm looking at how many people are using a credit card that's creating this $26,000. And I can tell you exactly what the fee should be. What you're showing me is that this guy charges 3 cents, this guy charges 4 cents.
I understand, but keep in mind that that line item is for all of those. That line item is not just credit card fees, that is for all processing, all
I got it.
transactions.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay,
I get that, I really do. But I would still like to know who pays with a credit card or any form of payment that creates a charge for us. That information has to be somewhere.
Well, those total costs for processing are out there. That number is there.
Well, that we have, and we can average it from month to month, but I want to know who's creating this cost. It's the people that are paying with a credit card. Or whatever form of payment. I mean, this is really simple math here.
well, but almost all of it, almost everything, other than cash and check, if we do an ACH through the website,
through the website.
anything through the website has a 40-cent transaction fee associated with it, regardless of what kind of payment it is.
And that's fine. I want that number on the website. I want the number on the credit card. And how many people, how many customers do we have right now?
We have about 2,800 accounts.
Well, it's a pretty small number then. How many?
2,800 accounts.
It's like a dime a person. So we don't have to, but not everybody uses a credit card. See what I'm saying? That's why it skews the overall number. That's why it needs to be like $1.95. And that rate can go down if we're making money on it, because that's not the purpose of it.
You're not allowed to make money on it. You can-
That's what I'm just
You
saying.
cannot charge, you're willing to charge more than what you're being charged.
That, I believe I just said it, maybe I didn't say it clearly that way. We're not going to make money on it.
No, you said if we made money, then we could drop it down. But we can't make money on it.
Well, then they get a rebate back on. I'm not trying to make money on this project. I'm trying to cover our costs. So if you want to start lower and then find out that we're 32 cents off from last year, then the fee goes to $1.20, $1.25.
That's where I come back to my question, do you want to do a fixed fee or a percent, just a percentage? Because the credit cards, we're currently paying $2 per transaction. Switching this means we will now start paying, let's just say 3% to keep the math simple. So do you just want to put a 3% adder on every account? I mean, that'd be a simple, straightforward way to do it.
If whatever's the simplest way to cover our costs and the least expensive, that's what I want to do. It may not have to be a number. So if your bill is $10, you're paying the 30 cents.
And so if we did that, the simplest way to do it is just to do it on credit cards. Not worry about all the other miscellaneous processing fees. Right,
If it's covering our expense,
covering which expense.
the expense that we're incurring.
That's what I'm trying to get to, is we are, part of what we are doing is in processing through things through the website, we are paying a 40-cent per transaction fee because I believe at the time that was deemed to be more cost effective than internal staffing to do it. So us paying a 40% transaction fee for somebody else to summarize and and process all the payments was a good deal for us. That's what it was evaluated at that time. The question that the commission has been discussing, at least from what I understand, is the credit card fees, which are significantly more under standard agreements than anything else that folks are using. I mean, so are we really focusing on the credit card fees, or are we looking at all those internal administrative costs? Because if we're going to go down that path, then a paper check costs us a lot of money just on internal administration at that point. And we could just overwhelm ourselves with.
But the administration, not to interrupt you, Keith, but the administration cost to do that is built into our budget via the paycheck that they get. So, I mean, we can't get so deep in a web to, what is creating, my question to the commission, what is creating the largest expense form of payment? It's my understanding that it is credit cards.
Yes.
Okay, so my first shot in the jungle would be to eliminate or cover the greatest expense. We're not going to get this right on the first day. We're not going to get it right on the third year. But at least we're starting to cover our cost before we go to them and say, you're going to have a rate increase.
Right, so, and that's why I'm asking the question the way I was. So, assuming that, then the simplest, easiest way to do it is just to say, it's going to be a percentage based on whatever quote we get back for the credit card payment process. So 3% of your balance. Is that what we're talking about?
Let me just ask a point of clarification. The 21 to 26,000 you've heard Mr. Schwartz talk about, is that fully comprised of charges for credit/debit cards?
No. It is all of our electronic fee processing.
All of our fees for processing payments of whatever kind.
Right.
So some portion of that 26,000 is credit cards.
Correct.
And so would you say off the top of your head of that, this is a crazy question, but I'm going to ask.
Yep.
But some large percentage of that 20,000 is specifically tied to credit cards.
I don't know the percentage, but yes, I would say that, well, under our current structure, maybe half. If you know, if you're going to put a gun to my head, maybe half of that is credit cards. But I don't know. I mean,
but still, you know, we've tried to make it as easy as possible, and we have tried to be economical of the processes we use internally to make payments easy and affordable. Credit cards are the ones that, and are debit cards treated the same as credit cards, Kathy? So whatever plastic card they use, those are the most expensive things for us to process in terms of payments. We think.
they will be. They will be. And I say it that way because we are currently not paying a percentage of the payment amount. We are paying a flat $2 per transaction fee. So it still is, but the differences are not what you would typically think of from a business that is taking credit card. It's not, we're not paying 3% right now.
Yeah.
Going down this path, we will be paying 3%. That's what I've been told by everybody who works on this for us.
Well, I think we ought to think about putting a fee of something like that $2 number out there and see what's going to happen. There are going to be implications to that. We ought to verify that so that we know exactly what we're talking about. That's something that has to be brought, certainly I think brought forward when we have those discussions with the city. We don't want to sit down with a bunch of councilmen and say, here, we think it might be, it's either going to be $2 or $12.
somewhere in there. Let's find out exactly what it's gonna be, so that when we have this discussion, we know what we're talking about.
My number is wrong, I apologize, because I was only using 1 month. It's 78 cents a month, using your customer account and using that expense
78 cents
a month.
per customer.
Yep. That equals $26,208. So it's 78 cents per month per customer if you have 2,800 customers. So you're less than $1. And this gets this done. The 9 cents, the dime was talking about, the 0.9 was for 1 month times 12, so 78 cents.
So I'm sorry.
That's across the board. If you're charging,
So
so whatever percentage that would come up to, Keith, on average bill.
I'm sorry, I'm not following the math. So you took the total number of customer accounts.
You're 2,800.
So everybody pays.
I only have your customer account, which is the 2,800 you said. So at this point, for this example, yes. So it's going to go up because some people aren't using that at all. I get that, but I'm trying to start someplace. We have all the information that we need. It's just going through the calculation.
I'm not following the math. If you have 0.9 times 2,800, I get $2,500.
No, it's 0.9 times 12. This is each month.
Is it $21,000 a month that we're spending?
No.
No, that's $21,000 a year.
Yeah, it's in the slides, yeah.
Well, we can have a study session on this, but apparently, if I just make this statement, then we can move on. Apparently, there is a need to have this on the agenda.
There is.
So that needs to be an ongoing.
And the agenda for the joint meeting, hopefully.
Chairman?
Sure.
Tomorrow I will bring this discussion to the city council and just so that they're aware of they're gonna want, you're gonna want their opinion or their input.
Yep.
Right? Not just for information, but think about this and we'll
Well-
discuss it to get some input from them. Because
Yes, I think it's important that you bring it up because as we go to charge a fee, we're gonna pass those costs along. It's gonna be a small percentage of what we collect, but those costs are gonna be passed along to the city. So they need to understand that we're not gonna do this for our ratepayers without having that cost passed. We're trying to keep our rates low. And so I don't think we're just gonna automatically say, well, the city's got a free bill. But you need to understand that we're trying to do this in the most fair and equitable way possible. And so even though the sewer bill is a very small percentage of utility customers' bill, that's somehow we need to reflect that cost. Keeping in mind that the city already pays 75 cents or some number, they pay 75 cents to help cover the costs of mailing and billing process so that we can send you a check every month for lots of dollars. And so we need to just keep that all, keep it focused. And here's what the real costs are, both for us and for you.
I will bring it up and that'll be an item that we'd like to for sure have as a joint discussion.
Absolutely.
I don't know what to formulate their own ideas. I have mine ready.
I would just like to reiterate the analysis that I had in one of the memos for the commission, which was based off my best guess, you're looking at $4.50 per transaction, or 3%. I mean, I think that's about as good as we're going to get on a planning number anyway, in terms of what that costs. Is that what the commission's covering?
We have to do the math to find out what the 3% equals in cash. So we're really close. Just take that to the next one.
I think that'd be a good guideline to bring into that joint meeting, you know, that this is probably what we're looking at, somewhere around like 3%. If you want to pass that along, that's kind of what it looks like it might be. if we were-
3% convenience fee for
Yeah.
any credit card, check
You
card.
know, so I really want the feedback from, so far I haven't got feedback from anybody other than just right here. You know, that I haven't went and sought out myself, so I was kind of hoping that I would get somebody calling me here, telling me, hey, you know, this is my opinion on this, you know, so I really, me personally would like.
Oh, I will. I wasn't, I brought it up for information for them.
Yeah.
That you were discussing this. There was nothing
Yeah.
for me to bring to them as far as formulating their opinions. They wouldn't have any information to formulate their opinion. They need to hear this discussion is what they need to have before they can formulate one.
Sure.
I thought you did great.
Yeah.
You said what you would do, and that's what you did.
Yeah, but I most certainly tomorrow will say this has gone to another level. Now this may be reality and we need to formulate an idea on this, an opinion.
Jules, if I may ask you a question, who's creating the agenda for the city and PUC meeting?
That was supposed to be between Mr. Butcher and our city administrator.
Okay, well, we really have two things already. This, right? And then at the last meeting, you said that should be, pointing at me, said that should be on the agenda, what you talked about. That's the handshake, how PUC and the city is going to welcome people into the city,
Oh, okay, yeah.
right? I mean, feel that's still a good idea?
What not?
Okay, we had talked about,
Are you talking about you and me?
no, I can try, but no, the PUC wants to welcome people into the city.
Yeah.
And the city wants to welcome people in. And I'm just gonna say this, but when they came in and talked to Bob,
Okay.
they weren't
Okay,
very.
I follow you. That's something I think you communicate to Mr. Butcher and then you and Michelle could get that on the agenda.
Yeah, I just,
So more of a welcome.
right, how's that handshake? Is there an incentive?
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you said at the last meeting that that's a great idea.
Okay.
So those two things I think should make it into that agenda.
Sure. Yeah, I happy to have it on there.
But would you be opposed to that, Keith?
Oh, I can put whatever information wants on the agenda, so that's you.
I just don't want to have two meetings and two great ideas, and then that doesn't even make the agenda.
No, that's why.
But if you want to write them down, or you want me to write them down, or?
Well, if you have specific language you want to use, yeah, send me an email. I can put it on however you want.
Well, I just mentioned both of them.
Okay, yeah, but how, I mean, we're gonna talk about convenience fees. And what do you want the other agenda items to say?
To, how does the city of Princeton and PUC welcome a developer into our city? Because the last three developers left very.
I'm just trying to think of like an agenda item. I mean, is there a way you can summarize that?
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Maybe community development or something like that. Community development.
The relationship between city PUC and the community development.
Yeah, okay.
That's, I didn't mean to go off into something different, but the agenda thing is coming closer.
Yeah, I don't know if there was ever a discussion about that, for sure what the agenda was gonna be from our end.
I just didn't want all of us show up and say, okay, what should we talk about? So I just,
Well, council, I mean, we already expressed what we're gonna be, pretty much, we inform Michelle what we want on the agenda,
okay,
you know.
I didn't hear
I
it.
mean, it's no secret, I mean, we're gonna want to talk about pilot, 5-member commission, and things of that nature. I mean, that's, this convenience fee, other issues too, you know, partnership, there's a number of things, so. And we're all gonna, it's no secret, we're all gonna see the agenda,
So,
you know.
But I think what part of the problem is this is the only time we talk because of the three
I get
person,
it, yeah.
you know, so there's a
Yeah,
lot more
that's
discussion
why
goes on.
every,
It's good and bad. There's no behind the scenes conversation
I get it.
when you have a three person, so yeah.
Yeah.
So the meetings seem to take a lot longer probably. It seems like when I went to city council, a lot of things seem to have been somewhat, discussed. I'm not saying anything that's done wrong, I'm just saying there's more discussion that gets to go on freely.
I can talk to the mayor and the mayor, I mean, you can only
Right,
have two people. You can't go down the line and say, no, you go talk to so and so.
right, I can't call Greg and say,
No, you
what do you think
absolutely
we should have for the agenda? We have to have that discussion here.
Yeah.
So it does get cumbersome for the meeting purpose.
Right.
I
But that's
like
a whole, that's a whole separate topic. That's why we need to discuss it.
I like the openness of it.
Yeah.
I don't like the time that these meetings, because I maybe have a different time that we can talk about.
Yeah.
So you have those down as things that you want to bring with, and you can discuss those with Michelle. She may have some items that you don't have. As you work that out with her, we'll still have the meeting on.
Well, and each commissioner should feel free to email me if there's something you want to do.
Oh, yeah, sure, for sure.
I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a good positive meeting. And nobody is after anybody and that sort of thing. This is to put the communication, and I go along with Mr. Butcher and our conversations, and I appreciate that, by the way, is to really firmly get and have a strong relationship and partnership, and I love that word. But there's always things that we have to work out and deal with. So but if we just be open with each other, I think it's gonna be a good meeting. And we got good Michelle, and I trust Mr. Butcher, no problem.
Much more excited about this one than the last one.
So that kind of wraps up service territory. Move on to new business. Keith, maybe you can start that because I have no idea what first death is.
Yeah, well, actually, Jules would know a lot about this. I'll just start off by saying, it's just something that at this point, I'm just wanting the commission to be aware of. I was approached by Police Chief Frederick about this issue. A lot of it is because of the AT&T tower that was installed at City Hall. AT&T, let me back up. After September 11th, the federal government stepped in and said, we need to find a way for first responders to be able to communicate. And they went out for bid, and AT&T was really the only one that bid on it, from what I understand. And what they've been working on since then is to develop their own separate cell network. It's in a different bandwidth than the typical cell phones are. And it is reserved exclusively for first responders. So the idea is in the event of emergency, where, let's take an extreme example, say something happens at the school. Everybody at the school gets on their cell phone, and all the parents get on their cell phone, and all the grandparents get on their cell phone. And it overwhelms the system, and the whole thing collapses. FirstNet system is designed to be separate from that. It is reserved exclusively for first responders, so they can communicate to each other. And we, as a municipal utility, as part of the government of the city administration, is eligible to participate in the FirstNet system if we so choose. I believe that the city is transitioning at the end of the month, next week, if I understand correctly.
I'm not certain on that, but they definitely are going.
They are moving forward. So our local first responders will be switched over to FirstNet. So then the question came to us and said, okay, well, you guys are eligible if you want to. So Todd did it. It was really nice to put me in contact with the FirstNet reps. I've had a couple of different conversations with them, and our staff has had also some conversations with them to see if this makes sense. At the moment, it looks like that not only would we get that additional service during an emergency situation, but we might also save some money on it. So it looks like it could be a win-win. The problem is we would have to switch everything to AT&T. So all of our cell phones, hardware would get switched over, but it would cover our entire cell service network, which is not just individual cell phones, but it also includes our SCADA system for the water system. It includes our AMI system, which is connected in with the cellular network, and all the communication that we have throughout town for our needs. In addition, FirstNet, being an emergency focus, is also set up with mobile tower systems. So should a worst case tornado come through, takes out the cell towers, they could activate in Minneapolis and they could have a truck here 2 hours, is what the rep told me. And they would have the FirstNet system up and running within a couple hours. Everybody else would have to wait for, the other cell companies to come in and start repairing the network. Mm-hmm. So there's some benefits that way. We're still evaluating it. We want to make sure that the system integrates correctly with all of our stuff. I would really not, I would prefer not to have 2 different telecoms that we're working with on a regular basis. If we can do it all through one, it's helpful. We are continuing to still evaluate that. I think it looks promising, which is why we're continuing to work on it. Gotta wait and see how the city does, how that transition works for you, and see if there's any hiccups that we should be aware of. In here I think I did write, that we recommend, the staff recommends switching to the system. I guess I want to pause that for a second. Say we want to continue to evaluate it. But it is something that if I feel that we can get better service, more reliable service, especially for emergency situations, and it actually saves us money, we'll switch over. But it's kind of interesting. I should like to know about it.
Just a quick question. I mean, we have all of the employees that have cell phones are currently on Verizon.
Correct. We are currently using Verizon.
In addition to that, we have some transmissions taking place through Verizon vis-a-vis our AMI or
AMI and SCADA.
Fixed transmissions that take place that don't always go with the phone, but they are cellular transmissions nonetheless.
Correct.
Those go with Verizon.
Correct.
You're suggesting that AT&T not only would take these cell phones, but also the rest of our cellular transmission?
Yes.
It's a GSM system, not a CDMA system. Do we have that kind of GSM coverage up here?
We did have the FirstNet reps go to all of the homes for personnel that have an on-call phone or a company issue phone. And had coverage at all of those. In addition, we found we did do signal checks in various facilities, in particular the basement at the office. We don't get Verizon down in the basement. We get AT&T. We get FirstNet, and it's because of the new tower that went up at City Hall. Mm-hmm. So we have investigated coverage at all the areas that we were concerned about, and they measured it and provided me with a report.
Mr. Chair, question for Keith. So when you said it would save us some money, did you get any information on the cost of maybe change out equipment, cell phones, or?
They would cover all of that.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, they would issue new phones. We'd have to get some new cards or something like that for some of the equipment. But it should all be compatible. We gave them the model numbers on our modems and everything else, and they verified that they could do it. They seem pretty confident. Now, if we do FirstNet and then change our mind, the FirstNet phones won't work on any other system, so then at that point, we would have to.
Yeah.
Phones.
There's a fairly significant difference between GSM phone and Verizon, which is CDMA. So the chip that operates a Verizon phone is built into the board. The chip on an AT&T phone is built into the SIM card. So you can basically switch it on. You can't do that same switch up with a Verizon phone. So although the rest of the world outside of the United States is all on GSM, right now CDMA covers a big chunk. So, I'm really from Nebraska, so I look very hard at coverage areas, and you might get up near Emily and worry about your AT&T phone, where your Verizon is not an issue. But there are going to be some dead spots out there because it's an entirely different system. So, if Jeremy and Scott have these phones, but they're on vacation and, up on Rainy Lake somewhere, that might be an issue. But maybe it's not. Maybe they're expanding, now that they have a tower here, of course, everybody and their cousin is expanding with 5G stuff and everything else. So, like I said, the rest of the world is on GSM, so it's not new stuff. But
But I can only look at coverages in the Princeton area.
I have AT&T, I haven't found any place in the state of Minnesota that would work.
you're good. They're awesome.
Except for a few low dips here and there. Well, but other than down in a hole somewhere, it looks pretty good.
No, the airport's probably really high because it's a line of sight.
Sorry. Just to expound on a little bit, the purpose is, the reason we erected the tower in the first place with AT&T was for emergency services. And this is just part of it. The simulcast with the radios is coming as soon as we can get that project funded, but that will benefit also the PUC's public utilities also, because you'll be able to communicate just like public works, police, fire, and everybody during an emergency. So if you're out on, your linemen are out on, because there's a disaster in Princeton here, and they're out on they're out dealing with electrical problems, they'll be able to talk mobile to just by using this tower, just as clear as can be. And then this phone system, and you were exactly right, when an emergency happens, you have no cell phone coverage, whether it's Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, or anybody, you can't get through because the line, what's it called? It's just over too much usage. With this, it's our own band. It's our own. You will be able to call Princeton Public Works. You can call anybody.
Is this tower live now? Is it working?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I can see with my reception.
AT&T is working.
Yeah.
But our simulcast for the radio is not.
Okay.
And that's the next phase that we have to work through. So I would suggest also this would be a great topic to have on the May 6th meeting agenda again. To have
The city council gonna buy us dinner, because we.
Is to have an emergency or a management team that maybe explain it more thoroughly with you too. It's a good thing. So
It's
a good thing.
For Butcher to
Yeah.
get feedback on that. I don't know if we need that on the agenda. That's fine.
Yeah, are you on LTE right now?
Yep.
So it's not.
With LTE, well, I don't even know what that means.
You're not on, you're not on AT&T service right now. I have AT&T also, but I'm on the LTE, which is available when AT&T service is not. So, or whatever that's worth.
I got 4 bars. That's good.
I have 4 bars, but it says LTE, yeah.
Yeah, I have 3 bars and it says LTE. So if you were on the AT&T service, it would just be this, the radar man was, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, it sounds like a great program, some very interesting program, and certainly think the first responder thing is critical. But, you know, when you start thinking about emergencies, you think of tornado, you think of power lines down. I start thinking about Jeremy on a pole someplace, that kind of thing. And so, you know, with the potential for fires and everything else, it's important that Jeremy and Rob or whoever it is out there in the fire department can more communicate. And I think going forward with that is a great idea. And if we can save money at the same time, seems like a good plan. AT&T's been around for a while, they know how to make this work. So I'd say march forward, get the details, let's do something. So the next thing then on your agenda was to
The tort liability form?
I'm sorry, what?
The tort liability waiver.
The tort liability thing, right?
Yeah, if something we dealt with at the end of last year, this is just an annual waiver of liability coverage. And so but it does require action by the commission to approve that we will not waive the tort limits should anything happen. So we discussed this at.
I remember this one, so I'll make a motion that we, go ahead, so moved, so.
Okay. Motion been made, we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Yeah. Okay. And that's, oh, this one. So we have the last one, 9C is discussion of potential work session.
This was for commissioner's works.
Right. I'm requesting that we have a work session, a study session on April 7th to figure out how we can help this developer that is north of 2 come into the city and work out the details so public utilities can service them in a manner that's going to work for public utilities and that developer. It's 113 units. Greg, do you know what I'm talking about? Dan, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
It's 65 acres, used to be the Hatch property.
North of
by the free
the
church there.
trailer park.
Yeah.
North of the trailer park.
Yeah.
They have plans for 113 units, and Todd Olin was here and showed us all that. Right? But they're really stuck in the project because there's a discussion on what electric or water can and can't do. Water basically is the big issue, right?
It's difficult to answer that because what we have been given so far is just some conceptual drawings. There hasn't been any engineering done that.
No, there has been.
Okay, well, that hasn't been.
This is the reason exactly why I'm requesting that. Todd Olin contacted me. He would like to be at that study session. He wanted to come here, and I said, you need to be at a study session rather than here so we can spend 2 hours or whatever it is on that subject matter. There's a difference on what he apparently wants to do, and I don't understand all of his stuff, and I don't understand completely all of your stuff, but you both have good points. So this is that handshake, Jules, that I'm referencing, that how do we work together? Because right now the developers just sitting there going, I can't get into Princeton. So that's what I'm asking the commission and everyone that wants to be there. I think Bob Gerald should be there. I think anybody that has anything to do with the developer coming in, Michelle should be there, Jules.
Chairman?
Sure.
Most projects first, with the city first go through the planning commission. And I am not aware that this gentleman has ever gone through the planning commission. The planning commission, that's why they have to go, oh,
Yeah,
you're.
he's been there. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
that's,
yeah,
the process is done through.
Yeah, they're ready to go. If, they had a delay,
What did the planning commission recommend?
to move forward. I mean, but I don't know where the previous administrator was with it. Were welcoming to it. I mean, it wasn't, it was in the beginning stages. They were just, kind of an informative stage. But everybody was like, yeah, sounds great. We could use it. What we planned on using it for was more of a 55 plus.
55 plus was a different one, that's the other one, that's north of the one you're talking about.
This is south of my property and north of two.
Yeah. And I said, he brought in a whole basic diagram and.
There's 55 plus, and then the other one has a different.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, well, you know, I mean, it was.
Same developer, same. One is the townhomes and modular homes, and then south of two is more townhomes with the potential of annexing that into the city, and that hasn't been any petition to do that.
I think all we brought to the planning commission was north of two. And that was just, the way I understood that, that was just, modular homes.
Yeah, so
If you don't have the annexation papers, Todd shared with me that he's been given the green light by the owner to proceed with that request. That's the information I have, but just because there's so much unknown here, that's the request for the planning, or for the study session, so they can move forward. Not that we're gonna say yes or no to anything, but at least we get all on the same page of an understanding.
I mean, if we can help out in any way,
That's how
I don't know what we can do here, because from a point of view, I don't know what.
probably
But-
Stephanie should get that.
But,
I guess I'm kind of at the same place. I think it's incumbent on us as a public utility to be as helpful as we can.
yeah,
But we don't and shouldn't be doing anything until the city makes a decision about what they're gonna do, how they're gonna go forward. If they want to annex this property, if their intention is to annex this property, whether they have done it or not, if their intention is to annex this property, then it would seem they would want to have conversations with us about what does that mean in terms of bringing utilities out there. Here's, because we have the same thing going on here. I'll be back to you in a second.
Okay.
We have the same thing going on the west. The city has annexed the property. So now we are in a position to say, oh, okay, you're gonna annex that. Here's what we can do. We can bring electrical. We know you're gonna need a single phase, 3-phase. You're gonna need metering for X number of lots. And we can find a way to communicate with them what those costs are gonna be associated with those developments, and we can move forward, and we can be very, very helpful because we have knowledgeable people here that can do that. Before the city makes any kind of commitment, we don't, we can say, well, yeah, that's very interesting. And this is basically what we told the guy that was here. That's very interesting, very exciting, but we need hardcore details. Where are you are we gonna run utilities down this public road and then it's private road, or what's all this mean? Are we gonna do just electricity? Are we gonna do water and electricity? And until the city says, we're gonna be making a commitment to this, we don't really know what we're doing. So, yes.
North of two is in the city, and that's where the confusion comes in. South of two is the development that is not annexed yet. So what he's talking about right now is north of two, that's already in the city.
That property is already inside the city limits. That's it.
So he just wants to find a way that he can work on the other part, but that's for a later time for how the water run. I think he was saying, so we're getting into the study center, and I don't want to do that. I'm not the representative, but he's requesting that he be there at the study session as he is the subject of that requested study session. So I'd like to suggest that on April 7th at 1 o'clock, that we entertain Todd Owens and Kent in Florida might be fine in that day. So then we can figure this out on that we can do this, we can't do that, we should do this, how do we do it? Because right now they don't have any answers. And they're willing to answer any question that anybody has. But they're not getting answers. And this is exactly where, you know, where do we go? We got somebody that wants to put in 113 units and they can't get answers.
Well, have they got answers from the city?
They made a presentation to the city, but that's been several months ago. I'm not the representative.
Yeah, I know, but I'm gonna make it all your fault, believe me. No, and I don't mean to cut you off, but.
Commissioner Member, Chairman, I would suggest that we contact our Community Development Director, Stephanie, at City Hall, along with Michelle.
And he's done that to us quite positively.
Yeah.
I would like,
I will follow up with Stephanie and see where it's at.
and I would,
all I should say.
Stephanie.
Nothing has come before council.
No, he's been there.
Oh, I mean, nothing official. He made a presentation
Oh,
similar to probably what you had here. So we're aware of it, but there has been nothing officially come through city council action for engineering or annexation. I know the north part is in the city, but there hasn't been anything further than his initial presentation. And where that's at, I have no answer for you. I can check with Stephanie and see if she's working. That's.
It almost seems to me, forgive me if I get this wrong, but it almost seems to me that the work session ought to be one with the city. To know.
We got too much work to cover just between us two. Really.
No, I don't think you're referring to our work session coming up.
No, I'm not.
Sorry.
I'm talking about the city has to make a decision and say, here, we're gonna go forward with this project. Now, Princeton Public Utilities, how can you help us? I don't think the city has done that yet. Am I wrong? Please say so.
This is why he's requesting politely and kindly to have a study session where that's the subject matter. If it's to get direction from us, and this is what we can do, and this is what we can't do, and the next step is to visit with whoever, they're willing to do that, but they're looking at a chicken and egg thing. Come here, they say do that, go there, do that. That's the frustration that he's informing me about. And I say, I can only do this, request a study session on April 7th, and I don't know why we can't do that. If it lasts half hour,
I'm open that day.
I have to.
Okay, so.
I will have to check on the roof.
Pardon me?
I will have to check on the roof.
Okay.
I would still like to have it that day. If the room's not available, everyone has a schedule. We're just trying to get it in ours. Us three are open.
I would say let's find a way to do it. I mean, at this point, I think it's a little bit of the cart before the horse, but like I said, we should be willing to listen.
It's goodwill.
Exactly. You know, should this thing go through, public utilities ought to be to offer all the help we can, and not the help we can. But that's just my 2 cents. So let's get it on the agenda, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So the agenda, what do I call the agenda now? Is it sugar?
Todd Olin, there's a name for that development, but Todd Olin is going to be the one here.
believe it was Sherwood Villages, but
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Sherwood Villages here. Who's, Rick, who's title of work? What's the
Land form.
Could maybe if you're talking, get them to send us, or send Keith some out of whatever, something ahead of time, so I can see.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else is involved.
Yep.
I just want a little more information.
And Michelle and Todd know each other very well. So,
Yeah, I'm sure I've met them many times.
Yeah.
You know, but, here's what I don't know is what we can do for it.
maybe we just listen.
Yeah, that's what I'm wrong.
And that may be all we can, but we should certainly, in my opinion, be open to listen. And, you know, he's got to do certain things. There are certain things we can do to help these projects, some things we can. But I think once we have that set down, then, you know, then maybe he has some direction, he can go back to the city and say, hey, what can we do from here? So,
This would be just all part of my campaign, principle, or user friendly for somebody that wants to, you know, I mean, before somebody say, well, it's the mayor, somebody before would say it's the administrator, well, they're gone. So if it still exists and they're gone, then we still have a bigger problem. Thank you.
sure. Okay. In that case, we're down to, unless anybody has any closing comments, we're down to adjournment, which I would entertain. Seconded, motion made, seconded, all those in favor say aye. 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 That's 3.